blockade on the Strait of Hormuz to go against the blockade from Iran. And there have already been 34 ships that have gone through under U.S. control. What does this mean for U.S. military action in the region? And we'll also discuss some of the primaries that we're headed towards as we head towards the midterms in 2026. Stay with us today as we go through all this and more on today's Pipeline Report. All right, welcome everyone. I have Pastor Tim joining me here in studio. We have a lot to cover today. President Trump is super active on what's going on in the Middle East, as that's been his focus after Vice President J.D. Vance came out last week and talked about how after 21 hours of negotiation with Iran and everyone involved there, from Turkey to Pakistan, and even Jared Kushner is there with him, and they have been failed negotiations with Iran, and now we're leading into a couple weeks after the ceasefire, and President Trump has said, you know what, why don't we put our own blockade? And what's interesting about that is you've already seen this morning ships go through the Strait of Hormuz that were since being blocked. So we'll discuss this and we'll dive into this here. As we've seen here and are hearing President Trump answer questions from reporters this morning. But one of the interesting things that we're also leading into is the California gubernatorial race that is many candidates involved, both on the right and the left, where both Republican and Democrats are asking candidates to drop out. And we had one candidate drop out after major allegations. What does this mean on the congressional side with Eric Swalwell? And more. So, Pastor Tim, any thoughts on leading into anything we have going today?
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today. We feel like it's an important day. I think every day almost as we move into this new season is important. But with the crisis in the Middle East, the spirit realm is so active. As you know, we did a ceasefire last week, and now we're in a place where Iran is not upholding the ceasefire. And President Trump has put in this blockade of just the Iranian ports, not the whole strait. As Zach said there, 34 ships have made it through already. So this is going to stop the money flow to Iran, which probably should have been done a long time ago. They pretty much sank their whole navy, so there's these little boats that can come out and buzz them. President Trump has ordered his troops to take them out if they do. But this is going to stop the flow. Let me tell you, Tehran is in chaos right now. I read one report. Let me read this report to you from what's going on in Tehran. This is from an Iranian Telegram channel. It says, Tehran is filled with Toyota Hilux pickup trucks armed with machine guns. The city's appearance has become much like that of the ISIS crisis in Syria. You saw in Iraq during their battles. Checkpoints have increased. With a fewer personnel, though, as most major intersections, suppression forces have been stationed under bridges, all over the highways. Checkpoints have been set up with the flags of the Islamic Republic and so forth, harassing citizens, causing traffic jams. Tehran has effectively become a military camp for foreign militias, subordinate to the Revolutionary Guard. And so what you have is a breakaway from the IRGC, as well as locals fighting them. Private companies are operating at full capacity, but government offices are down to like 30% staffing. Even those who come in the middle of the day leave in the afternoon. Telephone response to all government agencies, hardly anybody ever answers. City's transportation system also operates at less than half of the pre-war capacity. Most city buses are used for special units to protect them for rest and changing clothes. In practice, there's no government in the country. The Revolutionary Guard and all its bodyguards and so forth, they're trying to control everything, but there's no connection between them and the higher levels. So The military's not even talking to the higher levels. Education systems been shut down. Government services, banking systems are only operating intermittently. ATMs have no cash. It's impossible to obtain cash, and there's no movement basically within Tehran at all. So don't believe what you see on the cafes and all the people in the streets and so forth. They said it's like the city that's walking dead. But I'll say this, that's what's happening. That's part of war. So with the left embraces our enemy always, and so they're not telling this story. So that's what's happening on the ground. Here's a clip of what's really happening. I think a good update on what is occurring as far as what they're seeing on the Straits. And here, let me play this clip, and it'll tell us a little bit.
Get through. So we had the talks. Why did the regime show up if they said they weren't going to with these preconditions? It's more about theater for the revolution they're trying to stave off from the 90 million people. Every single day that goes by works to our advantage because you have them turning on each other inside the regime. They don't know who's really in charge, and they're just trying to hold it together to see if they can't regain control of the country. They're losing that, and every day just makes it worse for them. And now President Trump is correctly stepping on the gas and saying, we're just going to take over the Straits. He's probably going to have to coordinate with Beijing on this one because they are probably very, very concerned about that. Yeah, they were getting ships through, but that's where we find ourselves right now. And you know, I think the final talks will be how do we keep a few of us still in power in this new plurality.
Okay, so I think that's a good, speak to that, Zach. I think he has a good analysis of what's actually going on.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it briefly, you're seeing a split from the actual political leaders versus the military leaders. And this is the disconnect. This is where because so many layers of the political leaders have been taken out, the military leaders are acting on their own because they don't even know who to report to. And now you're seeing this blockade go into effect where Trump's saying, look, why do we have to lay at the demands of these leaders who have no control of their country? There's even reports of blackouts that have been going on for several weeks now because they're not able to actually run the energy structure within the country. And now you're seeing these ships go through, which opens the flow of oil for everybody there except Iran. And what was happening and has been happening is ships have been going through there. They just haven't been able to go through if they have any association with Israel and or the United States, or they pay millions of dollars of fees, which is highly illegal. We've mentioned that before. And we actually have a video we'll talk about here. But now what Trump's doing is saying, okay, ships can flow through except Iranian ships. If they can't go in and out of Iranian ports. So there's a lot of countries there where you're seeing there are other ports. They're not just Iranian ports. But I want to play this video here from a
foreign minister.
A foreign minister from Singapore, where, let me pull this up here, who was basically telling the actual story of what's happening. If I can, hold on, let me pull this. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, let me speak to that while he pulls that up. It's highway robbery, as we used to say, illegal. The straits, the waterways should be free of tolls, should be free of taxation as you described it. They're international waters. Now, it'd be one thing like a canal,
Straits of Malacca,
so forth. But this guy is a foreign minister in Singapore who describes actually what the maritime law should state and how it should be, because they have a strait in Singapore as well, which they allow all ships to go through freely. So he shares that. So listen to this information that he gives.
Straits of Malacca, the Straits of Singapore, is in fact another critical choke point. You may be aware that, in fact, if you add up all the maritime oil, crude and refined, you might be surprised that actually more flows through the Straits of Malacca and Singapore than even the Straits of Hormuz. If you think about global trade, container trade, there's far more flowing through this place. And the most important geographical fact, which most people are not aware of. The narrowest point in the Straits of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles. Guess what the narrowest point in the Straits of Singapore is? It's less than 2 nautical miles. So do you understand now why we have to take a categorical position that international law and UNCLOS is the constitution of the oceans, and this is a right. Freedom of navigation as a right and not a privilege for ships and planes. And this is of profound importance to Singapore. So to your specific question, yes, I have engaged with the Iranian foreign minister before the war. And yes, I'm sure I will engage him in the near future. But as a matter of principle, and not because we're taking sides, I cannot engage in negotiations for safe passage of ships or negotiate on toll rates, because to do so would be implicitly eroding this legal principle. So again, this is another example of Singapore upholding principle, not taking sides.
And this is what we've seen before. The Heritage Foundation came out and said this very early on, that what Iran is doing is breaking international maritime law at a high level. And here you see a principled leader stand up and say, okay, enough's enough. We can't even begin negotiations, because even the thought of this would be breaking these international laws. And I think this just shows the reality of the fact that these international laws mean absolutely nothing. And so now here we are, and President Trump says, okay, because they mean nothing, then we're going to go ahead, and because we're at war, we're going to put our own blockade up and protect people, because this is affecting more than just the United States, more than just the EU, and this is affecting the entire world with the amount of oil that comes through there. You're even seeing Ireland come out and have these major protests because of the price of oil that's hitting Ireland. And the reality is and Trump's doing, in a sense, the world a favor, because we don't get our oil from there. The rest of the world does. EU especially. They're having, in Germany specifically, they're having problems getting oil there. You're looking at a lot of the other Gulf states in the region trying to find ways to get oil and sourcing out of the Strait of Hormuz across the country. There's reports that Saudi Arabia has been successful at starting to do that, but it's taken several weeks now. If what they're saying is true, and their capabilities are at the point where they can move oil away from the Strait of Hormuz into different ports to get them out to the rest of the world. So here you're seeing Trump say these things. And here's this great report here of talking about that, of 7 million barrels of oil per day after the tax that Reuters is reporting about, because they were upwards of 20 billion a day or 20 million a day. Now they're down to 7. There's rumors and analysis that they could get up to 8, but that would be pushing the threshold of their system too far. So they're going to lean back a little bit, which is a major blessing to the rest of the world. Now, this puts the hammer on China. Do they get involved in these negotiations now? Because they've been conveniently been able to stay out of it. So here you are seeing these allies and these pressures line up that President Trump is pushing the thumb down on. And this is why Venezuela before was ever so more important for him to capture, because now they can't go to China, and Russia can't go to Venezuela now. Now President Trump is forcing Venezuela to get that oil out into the market and to people. And if you've seen the gas prices lately, this week they stood still. They didn't rise higher. They're standing still. So that means there's some stability in the market. Obviously, with Trump coming out and saying we're going to put a blockade on the stock market, and gas prices kind of took a shock, and people were trying to take advantage of that. But if these things play true, if they're able to get oil out, you should start seeing oil prices start to go down slowly, and it may take some time, as what they've bought in reserves has been able to go down. And what Trump's putting out now, he actually said that this morning. Pastor Jim walked in. President Trump was talking to this with reporters, saying that there are completely empty oil tankers that are headed to the U.S. that are going to load up and start pushing some supply out there for the rest of the world, because the U.S. has started to ramp up under Trump on production of oil, and you're starting to see that here. You were mentioning to me last week about Louisiana benefiting from this majorly.
Yeah. Let me speak to this for America. Look, one person's failure can be a success for somebody else. And so for America right now, we're going to have a windfall for us in Louisiana. Our gas and our oil, any gas and oil state is going to prosper majorly from this. And so when we talk about the scripture says the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, this could be a picture of that, of it flowing. And I want to give one scripture to what President Trump has done. Last Tuesday, I was on a national prayer call, Clay Nash's prayer call, and we were talking about what the decision of the ceasefire can mean. But the Lord gave me a passage out of Luke 7:35, and it says that the wisdom is justified or proven by all her children, or by her deeds is another way of putting it. In other words, don't measure the events by what's happening right now, but in the long term. The Lord spoke to me that God was releasing wisdom right now so that in the end we'll have a production of harvest. And I think that's what we're going to see in the midst of this. We're going to see one of the most demonic regimes in the world no longer be able to threaten all the world with nuclear weapon, as well as controlling people, treating women wrongly, treating children wrongly, all these things, because God does not wink at that. That's a very strong issue on the heart of the Father. And so I think this is a way of seeing the victory come, and wisdom will be played out in time here. We cannot measure it. And I think about when it talks about in Psalm 73, when the psalmist said that he watched the wicked prosper over and over again, and he said he almost slipped and fell as he watched the wicked, because he was so discouraged thinking the wicked were going to win. And he said, then he came into the sanctuary of God and he saw that the wicked will fall. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's what this war is about. It's about the wicked falling, and that God would allow the righteous, those who are trying to do what's right, to prosper in this hour. I think we're seeing it played out. We'll get on another issue on a congressman in a minute concerning that, but in this war, I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and somebody asked in the chat, did we think that this was his plan all along? It could have been. I mean, it looks like it's that way, but I think it's more of Trump. He kind of knew this might have gone this way, and he knew where the reserves were, and the demand supply was to meet the demand, which is why I think he understood the importance of taking out Maduro and dealing with Venezuela first, because now if you do that, it gives you a lot more free play, free money, as some people talk about in dealing with Iran, because now there's no fallback to kind of avoid the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump's, and we've talked about this before, Trump's understood this since the 80s. He's understood there's been a problem in Iran with the leadership who's been in there. And it's interesting that, 47 years of the Ayatollah's reign, and here you have the 47th president in office dealing with this issue. And so whether this was intentionally planned, I don't think Trump said, hey, we're going to do this and this is going to happen. It's just like, hey, if we do this, we have this option. That's kind of how Trump operates as a business leader. It's not necessarily a control. It's kind of the boundaries of, hey, we're going to go do this, and if this escalates to this point. And I don't think anybody, and maybe Trump understood this, how strong and stubborn and stiff-necked the Iranian leaders are in not negotiating. Because Trump's warned them multiple times, hey, if you don't, then there's nothing left for you for a future in regards to that of breathing air. So here Trump's playing this out. He's given them another opportunity, and what he's trying to avoid even in this, military conflict, he's trying to avoid taking out electrical grids, production of oil for them later after this government is taken out, because he wants the people to be able to have some source of income to be able to provide for themselves, to put a roof over their head, to put clothes on their back, to put food in their bellies, and to be able to have something to work towards rather than just completely obliterating it. And I think that's an honest and fair line for him to be walking, but it's a hard one. And so rather than getting nauseated by what's happening about, oh, this is continuing, oh, he said he wouldn't go on this long, is he's creating some action in this where there is no open door negotiation on the other side. He's trying to get them to wake up. And if you remember back to even World War II, in the fact of like, look, the only reason that America dropped the A-bomb twice, and they had to drop it twice because Japan and the Japanese didn't really comprehend what happened in the first one, because this is how stringent and stubborn and stiff-necked they were at that time. And it took 2 A-bombs being dropped for them to realize, like, oh, they mean business. And Trump's trying to avoid that. He's trying to see if they'll really waken up and kind of loosen their necks a little bit to understand of what's going to happen. And so this is a good move. He put out on Truth Social, I'll pull this up just so we can, you can see this and can confirm. I'm going to put this one up here. Let me blow it up a little bit. Where he says this morning, as we're actually 48 minutes ago, 34 ships went through the Strait of Hormuz yesterday, which is by far the highest number since this foolish closure began. President Donald J. Trump. So here we are seeing news being reported here straight from Trump's mouth, is that ships are going forward. And what this means, hopefully, is that there can be a supply that meets the demand of the world market, can cool some things, in Europe and in Ireland and elsewhere. But now these countries have to start making decisions as far as their relationships with Russia, Iran, and China when it comes to these meeting the demand of the supply that they need for oil and natural gas.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part of the pipeline today, we want you to pray accordingly that God would continue to give President Trump, his team, wisdom, the negotiations. J.D. Vance came back from Pakistan and just said, hey, they're not willing to move at all. And that's why we had the closure of the strait.
One thing before you move on, and for J.D. Vance to come out and say that is huge, because he represents the kind of middle of the Republican Party who says we need to isolate. And if you go back to the story of the Barbary pirates, this is a reason of why we have Marines, and the importance of why we have a Navy is because, look, there were shipping lanes, there were trade going on, and the Barbary pirates were coming in because of their Islamic beliefs, taking out our ships and supplies, not only for the U.S., but for the world. And the reason I bring that up is because we have to understand that for those who just say we want to be left alone, we don't need to be involved in these wars and these conflicts, Thomas Massey's, Marjorie Taylor Greene's, Rand Paul's, and there's a host of other congressmen and senators who have this point of view is, look, one, we're in this. Like, you can't go back. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube if you've ever tried that. Or another one I've experienced recently and many times is giving a child food he doesn't like or that's nutritious for him. It's very hard. But the reality is like, look, we're here. This is we're having to deal with, and we have to walk through this. So how can we get through this? How can we pray? And what we want to pray is for President Trump and the military leaders and talking the dreams is what we've been praying. We need to continue to pray it, to cut through the noise of those who are trying to control a situation, who are on the outside, and who are affecting negotiations in the public square. And what this does is for the populace, this allows them, this false narrative has them pushing this opposite agenda of what's actually needed right now. Not necessarily just support, but of arguments internally and externally in America that I think if we were to look at this in a clear lens, an emotionally intelligent lens, then we would be able to see that, okay, this may not be the desired goal of how we should come about this, but the reality is like, look, Iran was on the precipice of developing nuclear weapons. If they did that, the world would look completely different, whether you agree with it or not. That's the reality. So we're here. So how do we navigate through this? And this is the big narrative going on inside the military, the big argument that's going on inside. And then the reality is we're here, and we have to make our way through this. So that's why we want to pray for President Trump, those around him, and so who are surrounding him, who they can have a clear voice. And he seems to be doing a good job. But then we can't forget something to continue to pray for Susie Wiles as she goes through battling her breast cancer, and how that affects him because she's a big key and cog in that machine of keeping the crazies away from him.
So as we move forward, let's pray for our military that's gone through the straits already. I know 2 destroyers have already made it through. Pray for their protection as they cause this blockade and stop all the ships from the Iranian ports. We need to pray that. And, of course, J.D. Vance came back and said the number one thing that Iran would not do was give up the enrichment of uranium to produce a weapon. And that's a non-starter for us. We can't have that. You understand the Shia Islamic mindset. Remember, they're waiting for their Messiah, the Mahdi, I think they call it. They're waiting for that, and they don't see as a bad consequence if they were to drop a nuclear weapon on Israel, that the fact that they would have nuclear weapons dropped on them. He does not see it. The way they see this is it would produce a theological or a eschatological end for them where their Messiah would come and destroy all the world that is not Islamic. So you got to understand there's more than just political movement here. That's why the Ayatollahs had to be removed, because they were pushing that ideology on the people. So this is how big that is. Okay, so I want to shift now to Representative Stalwart from California.
Swalwell.
Who's been running, Stalwell has been running for governor in California. If you remember him from the past, he had had affairs with Chinese spies in the past. He got away with that. He's been corrupt almost his entire
He's married to a Chinese
career.
spy.
He's married to them. He's been corrupt for almost his entire career, has gotten away with it. He is a Psalm 73 picture where the wicked keep prospering, seem to get away with it. We call him the Teflon man. Nothing sticks to him, doesn't matter what. Last week, he said, this is a state from X. He said the president must be removed. If Congress is too cowardly to do it, his own cabinet must do it. Now, he states this. Now, he's running for governor of California. Today, he dropped his run because all the allegations, and now we have video proof of his work, his time with sex workers. He also had illegal aliens as servants in his home. And now we have other women coming out and said that he was raped by them, by him. So we are now seeing the whole Democratic Party is asking him to resign from Congress. So the very thing that he was telling that they should do to Trump is coming back upon him. So here's a analysis from one of the candidates, the Republican candidate that's running in California, about the Swalwell campaign. See if it'll play here.
Also a candidate for governor is Steve Hilton. He's with me now. And Steve, good morning to you. These allegations hit on Friday evening. By Sunday morning, 50 staffers had signed a letter against Swalwell going forward. Why now?
Sorry.
Look, Bill, these allegations, these stories about Swalwell, they've been out there for as long as he's been in the race. I've been hearing this, and I'm on the other side of the political fence. And so the real point here is, why did he ever get in the race? It's the arrogance of these career politicians. They think they can get away with anything. And then you saw, excuse me, all these unions backing him, knowing this about him. You saw all these politicians like Adam Schiff and all the Pelosi acolytes in Congress backing him, even though they knew this was an open secret about Eric Swalwell on Capitol Hill and in Sacramento. And so it's amazing to me that he and they, the Democratic Party, thought that they could get away with it for so long. Now they're left with their backups aren't exactly great. Katie Porter or the billionaire climate fanatic Tom Steyer. More than ever, it looks like I will be the next governor of California. I'm leading in the polls even before the president's endorsement last week. We need change.
This is a jungle primary. Which
Okay, so he's going to explain it's a jungle primary now in California, which is an unusual picture of what can happen here because they can all cancel each other out, and Hilton there can win the election, which will be really unusual if this happens. It happened before once with Governor Brown. Same thing happened. So we may get a Republican governor. All he's got to get is 50%. So this may happen in California, which would be great news for all you out in California Many of you know we've been praying and we've been believing for transformation. The Lord told me California's hour is right now. We were just out there a few months ago. We prayed and we prophesied all across the state. So I believe California, we'll let you know we're standing with you. And as we get ready for this coming election, California is in play to see a major shift in that state. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, and with the primaries, it's the top two candidates. And right now there's two Republicans leading if Swalwell were to stay in. And even if he drops out, the Democrats are not there because what's happening is they have too many Democratic nominees, and the Democratic Party in California they're asking Democrats to drop out because there's too many. But I want to play this video from Kevin McCarthy from over the weekend because it explains, kind of the severity and the depths of this situation and how bad it is for even Kevin McCarthy.
We don't have much time left, but I want the allegations against Eric Swalwell, which have not been independently confirmed by ABC, he's denied them all. But serious sexual misconduct allegations, and now you have an army of Democrats abandoning his campaign for governor. He was the leading candidate, a Democratic candidate for governor, and now he's facing calls to drop out from people like Nancy Pelosi.
Listen, let me be very clear. I tried to get rid of Swalwell 8 years ago. When I got the briefing, when I became leader with the FBI, Nancy Pelosi was in the room. I turned to her and said, how can you keep her on Intel? Intel is a select committee that only the leaders put on, that you know all the secrets that the members do not.
But
I made a motion.
Was this about sexual misconduct allegations, or?
It was a combination with the Chinese spy and led to all that. Every member in Congress knows not to let any young staffer get around Swalwell or Matt Gaetz. It's not a secret there. There's a reason why you didn't want. He was the leading candidate for governor. He probably could have won the primary and gotten there, but this all came forward. And these young women deserve justice.
I agree.
Donna, should he drop out?
His campaign is in a free fall right now with top staffers leaving. And let me just say this. As someone who knows at least one of the victims that have come forward, I'm very concerned.
Thank you, Donna.
And this is huge for them to come out and say. And then I want to play this clip because it's justice as well. Of when Ben Shapiro made some comments and Eric Swalwell brought it up, and it's quite interesting. And it hits differently now because of what's actually come forward when he's talking about restraining your own self-desires.
And just because we found some receipts, you did say, I think homosexual activity is a sin.
Yes, I'm a religious Jew,
I'm
that's
sure
true.
There's a genetic component.
You found me out.
Orientation. But the view of all religious people I know has always been that sexual behavior is something that is up to you. And you said, I may have a desire to sleep with many women, but I do not.
I agree with me. Yes, that's true.
Congratulations on your, I'm sure it's very hard to restrain yourself. Mr. Chairman, I just want to.
And so with that comment, it must be very hard to restrain yourself. Now those hit differently with what's going on. And why is this important? Because here you have one of the major Russia hoax voices and coming out against President Trump. Some of those similar accusations that he made is coming out against him. And it is it is very just debaucherous is the best way to say it. About what's happening because of the allegations and videos. It's not just hearsay. There's videos of him doing this in different hotel rooms, and if it's going around like what Kevin McCarthy said, and you see the sly jab against Matt Gaetz there, they have their own rift there, which is kind of completely unnecessary. But he said it. He said what he said about Eric Swalwell, and it's true. It's been going around for quite some time. Now for California, what this means is, okay, do you get a better candidate even on the Democratic side? Is it too little too late? We'll see what can happen through this. And so now's the chance for them to step up and put somebody in office who can actually turn the government over. And it's not just at the top level. It's got to be down ballot as well, and local communities who can actually put people in there who stand for freedom. As California, and Steve Hilton said it in that same interview, California has the highest state income taxes and taxes in general. So they need to do something about that as people have fled their state. It's something they need to deal with to be able to overturn one of the largest economies, not just in the United States, but even at a scale level around the world.
Yep. Okay, so let's do our last topic today. We're going to talk about the upcoming elections in 2026. I want to go through the primary elections that are coming up so that we'll pray accordingly. I'd like to on the pipeline now, because we're getting into primary season. We start in 3 days from now. Then we'll go all the way till November. So we want to make sure that you're aware of what to pray for and what to cover. So let me pull up the list of primary elections that are coming up here. Maybe make myself smaller here so we can, there we go. Let me pull these up. The first ones that are coming up, it'll be New Jersey. That'll be this Thursday. We have a special House election to replace Mike Sherrill. He's now the state's Democrat governor. So there's one election in Jersey. Also next Tuesday, Virginia, redistricting ballot measure. This one's huge because the governor that is in there now came in as a moderate, said she wouldn't do this, and she's changed it. Now they're trying to gerrymander and remove every Republican congressman within Virginia. I think in her plan, maybe one would remain, and they'll remove them all. And this is big because this changes the 2026 elections as we move forward. So there's a big ballot measure. If I could ask you to pray for something, that this would be very clear, that there would be court cases or something that would stop this one in Virginia next Thursday. We want to cover that. Now, for Indiana has House primaries on May 5th. Ohio has special elections on May 5th as well. Senator Husted, who was appointed for Senator J.D. Vance seat, was elected vice president, and the Republican favorite is permanently fill the seat. So we got to pray for that one as well. Houses to watch, governor as well. May 12th, Nebraska. There's a House race to watch there in District 2 we want to cover, as well as all the other seats, West Virginia, Senate and House. And here's the one we want to talk to you about in just a few minutes. Louisiana is on the 16th. We start our early election on the 3rd. We can start voting, or saying it's a second. This is Bill Cassidy seat, who we know very well. He's a Republican doctor, and he has been in office. I think he's been there 2 terms, and now President Trump has endorsed Representative Julia Letlow, which is a district that's just to the east of us here. I've lobbied her in my work in Congress, and also our state treasurer, John Fleming, former congressman, Mike Johnson, who's our congressman now. Fleming was once the congressman in that seat. So we have a primary coming up in May 16th. Cassidy has been a rhino at best, but he has embraced liberal. I've been in his office, just being honest with you, and he has the Trump derangement syndrome probably more than anybody I've ever seen. He does not like President Trump. Through my times with him, he was always fighting. I think he's a good guy. I think he let this thing get under his skin, and it began to affect his politics and begin to affect the way he thinks. And now he's one of the 6 Republicans that voted to impeach and convict President Trump in his first term, and that has come back to haunt him. Recently, last week, he's burning through all his campaign money. He had $25 million coming in. And now I don't know how much he's got left. He spent all these attack ads on Julia Letlow, spent millions. And now he's mad at the Republican Party for not giving him money and supporting him, at which they shouted back at him, well, you shouldn't have convicted President Trump. And so now he shot himself in the foot, and he's losing. The last polls that came out shows Julia Letlow 35%, Fleming 26%, and Cassidy 21%. So most likely, if it stays appropriate, which I think it's going to, he will not be a candidate for Senate. So this is good for Louisiana. It's good for America. I think we can't lose with Letlow or Fleming. They're both phenomenal candidates. I think Fleming's probably the better candidate. But as far as getting stuff done, Julia Letlow most likely would be the most effective. I've worked with John. I like him. He's a Baptist deacon. He loves the Lord. Amazing man of God. Former doctor as well. He's doing a great job as Louisiana treasurer right now, doing a phenomenal job, matter of fact, on fiscal responsibility. I think he'd be a great senator should he get in. We can't lose with either one of them. But right now, President Trump has chosen Letlow, and so that's where we're headed. Zach's got a map here of the makeup.
This is the Senate makeup. So you're seeing 3 elections that are going here that could go either way. They're toss-ups. This is from 270 to win. And you see Michigan, Maine, and then North Carolina that are up in the air. North Carolina, after living there, it is kind of up in there. There's so many new people there, it's hard to really tell how things will actually play out. But pretty much seems to be, especially in Louisiana, things seem to be leaning hard, basically staying in the Republican. But then you have some toss-ups here, and close to toss-ups here in Texas, and then also Georgia, where you're seeing things play out. And one of the more interesting ones, I'll go to this one in the House, is that you have 18 seats that are toss-up. So you're talking about right now thin margins for Speaker Johnson in the House for the Republicans. Can they flip those? Can they swing those? You have some out in California, up there in the Northwest, and then you have New Mexico down there in Texas near the border, which, I mean, you're seeing a shift there from what's actually going on. And then you have some even up there in Michigan and Iowa as well, in Illinois, and some in Pennsylvania. So they're all over the map. Start looking at polls and things of this area where you're seeing toss-ups, basically people trying to predict, and they're mostly accurate. And what it's going to come down to the day of is people actually getting out to vote. Who's going to go vote? How many people are going to go vote? What's going to energize them? And that's why President Trump has really dove into getting involved in this. Now leading into some gubernatorial races, 270 to win says, hey, this will lean California, but then you have Nevada and Arizona here that are kind of toss-ups in the governor's races, and then some other 3 to look at that are toss-ups that can really affect, especially if you live in those areas. This is something really interesting to look at, is Wisconsin, Michigan, and then Georgia. And then you also have Kansas, Iowa, Ohio, and even Vermont, New Hampshire that are leaning Republican. And then you have Oregon, New Mexico, and Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, and Maine that are leaning left. So depending on who goes out and vote, depending on the candidates, how well they campaign moving forward, things could go either way. So there's a lot to look into, to pray into as we move forward on these elections. And we'll keep diving into this stuff because we'll find out more information as we get closer to the actual election day and primary day, and figure out what days they are for you. They're different for everybody, and they're rolling fast. There's a lot. There's some that happened last week. There's some that are going to keep happening. We'll do our best to stay on top of that. Somebody asked the question, has Senator Kennedy endorsed the candidate? He's staying out of it. He's letting Trump be the deciding factor there because his voice doesn't really hold too much weight in that effect. But Trump has suggested Letlow in this race against Cassidy and Fleming. So we'll see what happens there in moving forward there.
Yeah, he likes Letlow for multiple reasons. She's on the Appropriations Committee, and she's done a great job there. But also she's fiery. She has a lot of personality. Fleming is what he calls low energy. He's very competent, but he's just not his kind of guy. So we see that. We also have down ballot issues that Zach spoke about. I don't think we can emphasize it. We try to on Pipeline here all the time. Attorney generals, judges, Supreme Court justices in each state, these are huge because they affect elections. And that is where district attorneys in your own districts, we have one here. Matter of fact, one of our state reps who lives in our city here is running for district attorney here. These are huge because these determine elections and how election laws are interpreted. So pray all the way down ballot on all these issues. It's a big issue as we go forward. So each week now till the end of the year, we're going to be talking about different states, different elections that are coming up. My main one for next week is Virginia and the redistricting ballot. This is very, very important. And for my friends in Virginia that I keep up with, they're highly discouraged because their votes are being squelched and their voices are not being heard, and they need to be heard. And I think that's very important. Yes, Senator Kennedy is not from Los Angeles. He's from Louisiana. Somebody asked that question there. We love our senator. He's an amazing man. So That's what I have today. Zach, you want to close out with this? Or thanks for being with us here on Pipeline.
I think one of the things, it's early on leading up to the midterms, and understand this is the tortoise, not the hare type of race. Is if you're going to rush it and try to think this is going to be over with tomorrow, this is the reality of where we're at moving forward, in the sense of it's trying to wear you down. It's trying to get you to not be involved and not want to stay involved. And it's not that you have to stay, in the weeds and understand everything, but it's if you can have a pulse and an understanding of what's going on and understanding the times, the seasons, like it's talked about of the sons of Issachar, and knowing kind of where the winds are blowing to a degree. And obviously take it to the Lord. If you're not understanding what's really happening, okay, Lord, how do I navigate this? Where do I need to go? How can I pray for this? Because it can be nauseating to see President Trump say some of the things that he said, and even some of the things with Swalwell. And there are even Republicans who have similar allegations against them, just like Swalwell. And so it's not that, these politicians are above reproach and that we think of them as pastors and political leaders. As religious leaders. They are political leaders. They are men. They're fallen men. We live in a fallen world. They make mistakes. And that's even more the reason of why we feel the need to pray for them and just to push some prayer points out here and to stay on top of the news and hopefully navigate through the news and not get caught up in so much of the culture arguments that are happening right now. And this is where Trump is making a lot of mistakes. And the people, I know somebody talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out against him and saying some things. And those are the points. It's like, look, that is not something we want to focus on, because at the end of the day, it's like, look, she stepped out because whatever reason. And I think she showed her true colors, and people like her are showing their true colors. But this is who Trump is. And he's our president. So we need to help pray for him and navigate through him, because he has people around him who are pulling him in different directions, and he is his own man. He's going to do what he wants. It's a good thing at times, and you're seeing some of the bad right now. As Ben Shapiro talked about, is, there's good Trump and bad Trump. Which one are we going to get today is the theme they had leading up to the 2016 election. And so, some days we have good Trump, some days we have bad Trump, and even a lot of days we have good and bad Trump. And so we want to pray that he stays humble and listens to the voice of the Lord who's leading him, the Holy Spirit, as we navigate these contentious waters that we're in, because it's affecting the world. And so we just want to bless each and every one of you for following along today as we continue to stay here on the wall praying for the nation and the office of the president. And we'll be back next week. And don't forget, tomorrow we have noon prayer as well. So blessings, and we'll see you guys